Parents take sister on vacation instead of me. Later on, she ruined family vacation and got arrested. Now, my parents finally realize her true colors. My name is Anna, 23F, and I have a younger sister, Lisa, 18F, who I think is the pure embodiment of evil on this planet. I have done everything I could to make my parents see the reality, but they never listened to me, until now. You see, my parents and I never had a very good relationship, mostly because of Lisa. My parents worshipped her because my mother had a miscarriage, and she lost the baby, which devastated her. Lisa, born a few years later, was seen as their miracle child, a source of hope and happiness that healed the wound of their previous loss. My parents lavished her with love and attention, making her the center of our family's world. Now, don't get me wrong, I adored my younger sister when we were kids. It's just that I gradually started noticing that Lisa had an amazing skill for manipulation that none of my family members could detect. She knew how to bend the story in her favor, and she was an expert at playing the innocent card. Once, on my birthday, I received this wonderful antique pocket watch from our grandparents. I was so thrilled with it, as my grandmother told me that it was a family treasure. But Lisa, well, she was obviously envious and kept asking if I could share it with her. I said no, because it was a present for me on my birthday. She tried to convince our parents, but since it was from our grandparents, they couldn't do much. That night, Lisa, who knew I was scared of spiders, put a house spider inside my pillowcase, making sure I would find it when I went to sleep. I woke up to the terrifying feeling of a spider crawling over my skin and started shrieking. My parents ran to my room, worried. Lisa acted all shocked and caring, but later she revealed to me with a creepy smile, when we were alone, that she put the spider there to teach me a lesson. I was stunned by how casually she admitted, without any regret. Another time, I recall when I had a crush on my classmate Mark, and I finally had the nerve to invite him over to watch a movie with me. I was feeling all bubbly and excited, and had carefully chosen a dress to dazzle him. But as soon as Mark arrived at our house, Lisa intentionally spilled a glass of juice all over my dress and started mocking me. I was more embarrassed and had to change, all while trying to conceal my humiliation. As if that wasn't enough, Lisa started sharing Mark embarrassing stories from my childhood, making me feel completely ashamed. She didn't leave us both alone the entire time we watched the movie. When Mark was about to leave, Lisa smirked and told him that he could do much better than me. Mark, who had been uneasy the entire time, left in a rush. I just couldn't comprehend how vicious and crafty my younger sister could be. Over the years, I told my parents about her antics several times, but they always attributed it to her being young and naive. They just couldn't see her for who she really was. Whenever I complained, they just ignored me and considered me as the troublemaker in the family, so I eventually stopped talking about her. Lisa continued being their favorite child, while I, always honest, often felt like the outsider in my own family. I concentrated on my studies and managed to get into a good college. This gave me an opportunity to move out of our house and have a better life in college. However, every time I came back home during breaks, Lisa made it crystal clear that she hated having me back in the house. She would purposely disregard me, refusing to participate in even the most basic of conversations. During family meals, she would avoid sitting next to me or interrupt me. If I was talking to our parents, her constant need to undermine my presence was proof that she hated the idea of me being around and was resolved to make my visits as uncomfortable as possible. Lisa also used to tamper with my stuff, claiming that she needed to borrow things, but would often ruin them or misplace them instead. My parents did nothing when I tried to complain, and instead encouraged us to get along with each other. As a result, I started avoiding coming home during breaks. I would make up excuses to spend my breaks with my college friends' families instead. To be honest, my parents didn't care as much and attributed it to me being independent and wanting to have some fun away from home. When Lisa finished high school, she didn't have the grades for college, so she opted for community college instead. This meant that she never had to move out of our parents' place. These days, I am working at a multinational corporation in San Francisco, and I truly enjoy my job. I sometimes keep in touch with my parents, but I seldom visit back home. I don't keep any contact with Lisa at all. Now, onto the story. My father recently had a near-death heart attack. Luckily, he survived by some miracle and was taken to a hospital. When my mother called to tell me about it, I instantly booked my tickets and flew back home to be there for them. The doctors prescribed various medications for my father and strongly recommended him to start exercising. Since being discharged, my father has expressed spending more time with us as a family and told me how fortunate he was to be rescued from the edge of death. I understood where my dad was coming from, so I continued spending a few days at our house. My job has the option to work remotely, so it was no problem. However, I noticed that Lisa was very annoyed that I was back. I did my best to avoid her, because we were both older now, and I didn't want to fight after our dad's heart attack. One morning during breakfast, my father proposed that we all go on a family vacation, as it had been a long time since we all went somewhere together. Initially, I had my doubts, but knowing how important it was to my dad, I agreed. As for Lisa, well, she wasn't happy about it, but she had no choice but to go along with the plan. My father made all the arrangements for our flights and accommodations. I had planned my leave from work in advance, and informed my colleagues not to contact me during this time, as I truly wanted to enjoy quality time with our parents. However, when we arrived at the airport, I found out that my flight ticket had been canceled. I exchanged confused looks with my father, who kept insisting that he had booked and paid for my ticket. When we checked further, it turned out that out of the 4 tickets, the one with my name on it in particular had been mysteriously canceled. As I stood there trying to understand the situation, I looked over at Lisa. She had a cunning smile on her face as she stared at me. It was a look I had seen so many times before, the same expression she wore when she had successfully pulled off one of her manipulative tricks. I realized at that moment that she was the one who had canceled my ticket, probably from my father's computer. I started screaming at her as she continued to stand there smiling at me. I pointed out to my parents that it was Lisa's doing, as she never wanted me to go on this family vacation in the first place. Instead of believing me, my mother immediately dismissed my claim, saying, "Your sister would never do something like that." She went on to tell me that I should stop being jealous of my younger sister, and that it was just a freak accident that my ticket had been canceled. My father also tried to explain that this might have been an airline mistake, and I should not blame it on my sister. I was totally frustrated that my parents couldn't comprehend that their beloved miracle child would be behind such a deception. At this point, there was nothing that I could do. My ticket was already canceled, and there were no other flights for that day. While it was feasible for me to catch a flight the next day, I didn't fancy the idea of going back home, booking a new flight, and traveling alone. After all, this was meant to be a family trip. I was also apprehensive about sharing a room with Lisa during this trip. I had hoped that she had grown up over the years, but if she was behind the cancellation of my flight ticket, I couldn't help but wonder what other plot she might have in mind to make my trip awful. My father was initially reluctant, suggesting they could all go back home and plan a new trip later, but he then started talking about how it had been a long time since he went on a vacation. My mother concurred, telling me that I always travel a lot for work, so I wasn't going to miss out on much on this trip if I didn't go. Their comments really bothered me. It felt like they wanted me to urge them to continue to go on this vacation without me. I told them that they were free to continue with their vacation if they wanted, and they eagerly agreed. Although I didn't want the money they had spent on the tickets and rooms to go to waste, I was unhappy that they didn't care whether I joined them or not. It became obvious that they didn't mind going on this family vacation as a family of 3. So there I was, standing alone at the airport as my parents and Lisa headed for their much-awaited vacation. I decided to return to my home in San Francisco, not wanting to spend a day more alone in our family house. I did my best to put the incident behind me and focused on enjoying the rest of my leave that I had already taken from my work. I reconnected with old friends and spent my days immersed in books, turning my break into a solo vacation. During the trip, my parents would sometimes video call me, and I could see how much they were enjoying the trip without me. It was like my absence didn't really matter to their trip in any way. Although I wasn't too upset about missing the vacation, I couldn't help feeling left out. It was yet another reminder of the favoritism that had always existed in our family. I hoped that someday they would see through Lisa's true nature, and I guess my wish finally came true. A few days into their vacation, I woke up to several missed calls from my mother. Worried that my father's health might have taken a sudden turn for the worse, I immediately called her back. Thankfully, she picked up, but she sounded extremely upset. I asked her if everything was okay, and she went on to explain that something deeply disturbing had happened. Apparently, my parents had noticed that my father's vital heart medications were vanishing day by day. It was a frightening situation, as my father couldn't afford to skip his medication, given his weak health. They were in a foreign country and didn't know if the same medicine would be accessible outside of the US. They were genuinely worried about the missing pills and searched their room everywhere in vain. My mother had gone to Lisa's hotel room, which was next to theirs, to borrow some sunscreen while Lisa was out. To her utter horror and dismay, she found all the missing medicines neatly tucked away inside Lisa's bedside table. It was a shocking discovery, and she immediately called for my father. He hurried in, and found all his medication that had gone missing the last few days. I guess this is when the truth hit them, that their beloved daughter, the so-called miracle child, had been deliberately endangering my father's health and putting him at great peril. My mother's voice trembled as she asked if they should confront Lisa about this. I asked her to not speak to Lisa about this until they were back home. They needed to collect their thoughts, emotions, and evidence to face Lisa with the undeniable truth. I knew that talking to Lisa now would be pointless, as she was a master manipulator and would likely make up excuses to avoid accountability. However, something unforeseen must have happened that night, and my parents must have confronted her about it. I received a late-night call from my father, his voice shaking as he informed me that Lisa was in jail. I was shocked. He recounted that Lisa had a massive meltdown when they asked her about the medications, hurling objects and screaming insults. Her anger was aimed mainly at my father, blaming him for booking a ticket for me when he should have never let me on their family vacation. She told them that if they kept having a relationship with me, she would teach them a lesson that they would never forget. Lisa continued to rage, and the situation worsened quickly until someone from the hotel called the authorities. When the officers arrived, she refused to calm down and offended them, which led her to be taken into custody. Lisa would be released after 24 hours, and there was nothing that my parents could do at the moment. Eager to return home after Lisa's release, my parents had then tried to reschedule their flight. However, their plans were thwarted when they discovered that their passports and wallets were missing. It turns out that Lisa had either thrown away their passports or hidden them away, but for now, they were stuck in a foreign country with no passports or wallets. I guess this was the first time that my parents started to see my sister for who she really was. My mother, who had constantly defended Lisa for all these years, was now pleading me to help, as they didn't have any money or their documentation to fly out of there. She was overwhelmed, shocked, and distraught at the realization of her angelic daughter's true nature. I told them not to worry and that I would send them money using Western Union, but they had to find their passports first so they could return back home. I was sure that Lisa hadn't thrown them away. My parents were finally realizing that I had been the truthful one all along about her antics and were thankful that I was helping them out, despite them not taking me on this vacation. They apologized for their behavior. While part of me wishes I could forgive my parents, it's hard to shake the feeling that I've been deprived of their love for all these years due to their favoritism towards my sister. So, I don't feel bad for not forgiving my parents, that they went on this vacation without me, and now that they get a taste of it, they come back begging for my forgiveness. Update 1. Every day, my parents call me with updates, and I am growing more and more anxious about their situation. You see, after Lisa was released from jail the next day, my parents warned her to give them back their passport, or they would call the authorities on her again. Left with no other choice, Lisa finally revealed where she had hidden their passports. For, upon their return home, my parents confronted Lisa and made it clear that she needed to pack her belongings and leave. It had become very clear that they had reached their limit, finally realizing the truth about their daughter's manipulative and harmful actions. She might endanger his health again by stealing his medicines. This started another shouting match between Lisa and my parents. During this confrontation, Lisa began to throw accusations at my parents, expressing her fury and bitterness. She told my parents that she didn't want to share them with anyone else, and claimed that she had been pushed to the edge when they invited me for the trip. She kept insisting that my parents should disown me, stressing that she was more than enough for both of them. It was at this moment that my parents must have realized the depth of her jealousy and the extent to which she resented my place in our family. While they tried to calm her down, she kept screaming accusations at them, and in a fit of desperation and anger, she claimed that she would go around telling everyone that they had neglected her when she was a child and mistreated her during her formative years. She was basically going to accuse them of parental negligence. Lisa then threatened to go to the police and make false statements against our parents if they continued to ask her to move out. This truly scared my parents, as these fabricated allegations would put them in a tough position, especially since they are well-respected doctors in our community. The mere thought of their reputation being ruined by false accusations has since left them feeling trapped and anxious. In the past few days, Lisa has continued to make our parents' lives more and more difficult. When she found out that they were talking to me regularly nowadays, she got really angry and started smashing dishes in anger. What's worse, she keeps stealing their car keys and hiding them, which makes it hard for them to go to work every day. Just tonight, my mother called me in tears after another bad incident. During dinner, Lisa had a huge tantrum and yelled at them because she wanted my mother to cook for her. When she refused because she was tired from work, Lisa went on a rampage and started breaking furniture around the house. Then she went to her room and turned up the music really loud, which prevented our parents from getting a good night's sleep. The situation keeps getting worse, and it's taking a toll on my parents emotionally and mentally. I am more and more worried about what might happen next. While I had hoped my parents would see Lisa's true nature, I now worried that she could pose a real danger to them. I can't even return home at the moment because it might trigger her further and lead to more violent confrontations. I'm doing my best to persuade my parents to consult with a lawyer so we can find a permanent solution to this ongoing crisis. The legal route seems like the best way to protect my parents and restore peace to our family. Update 2. Lisa has been arrested. As many of you expected, with Lisa's escalating antics, this was inevitable. One night, she came at our parents with a knife during a big fight. This scared my parents, and they had to call the police. The officer quickly took her into custody, placing her under arrest on charges of assault. With Lisa in custody, our parents decided it was time to pursue a more permanent solution. They consulted with an attorney who advised them on the legal process for evicting her from their home. They filed a formal eviction notice that said she had to leave. They knew it wasn't easy, but it was necessary to make things safer. Our parents didn't want to keep pressing any charges on her, as they just wanted her to move out. They bailed her out of jail and handed her a formal notice, telling her she had to move out. It had all the legal stuff explaining why she had to go and when she needed to leave. My parents made sure they did everything by the book, so Lisa couldn't challenge it. Next, they went to court with their lawyer to start the eviction process. It meant filing a lawsuit against Lisa. This was all pretty hard on my parents, since it was their own daughter they were taking to court. They felt really sad, guilty, and like they had no other choice. The court finally gave an official order that said Lisa had to leave the house. If she didn't go on her own, they would have the legal right to make her leave the property. Lisa is going to be out by next week. My parents can finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that they have taken a step towards getting their home and peace back. It's been a rough road, but they're hopeful that things will get better once Lisa moves on. I have stayed in touch with them throughout this ordeal and plan on bringing them over to San Francisco for a few weeks. It's a way to give them a break and let them relax after all they have been through. I am sure they could use a change of scenery and some time away from the stress Lisa has caused. Plus, it'll be a chance for us to spend some quality time together, and I want to support them as much as I can. Update 3. I have received hundreds of comments under my post, and it's taken me some time to read them. Many of you have suggested that we should consider getting Lisa checked out to see if there might be a mental health issue at play here. The problem is that since she's an adult, we can't force her to go for a checkup against her will. Due to her sudden violent outbursts, we don't want to push her and make this situation more complex than it already is. As I mentioned in my last update, my parents flew down to San Francisco to spend a few days with me. They are here to take some time away after what they went through the last few months. Yesterday evening, as we gathered around the dining table in my cozy apartment, my parents began to open up to me, their voices filled with humility and regret. They admitted that they had been blind to Lisa's true nature over all the years and begged for my forgiveness. My father expressed his remorse for not listening to my warnings earlier. He admitted that they never expected Lisa to turn out this way and were unable to see the truth that lay beneath her charming facade. My mother echoed my father's sentiments and acknowledged the seriousness of their mistake in dismissing my concerns about Lisa's behavior over the years. Her voice quivered as she voiced the pain of realizing how they had failed me by favoring her. I let them know that I appreciated them taking the first step in seeking my forgiveness. I shared several painful memories of the years of torment I endured due to Lisa's actions. My parents listened, completely shocked and dismayed at the extent of what I had endured on my own. They acknowledged the pain I had gone through and expressed regret over the isolation I felt in my own family. My parents recounted how their favoritism towards Lisa had clouded their judgment because they never had expected to get pregnant with her and always considered her to be their miracle baby. With sincerity in their voices, they begged for my forgiveness for all those years. It was a bittersweet moment for me, as I had always wanted their acknowledgement. While it may not have been the ideal way to mend our relationship, it was a turning point that brought some much-needed honesty and clarity to our family dynamic. We were, for the first time in years, truly acknowledging the issues that had plagued our family. I told them that it would take me some time to trust them again, and we all agreed to work through this together. For now, I plan to make the most of the time I have with my family while they are here with me for the next few days. Update 4. As the days went by, my parents and I spent more time together, exploring the lively streets of San Francisco, enjoying relaxing meals, and simply cherishing each other's company. It has been quite a journey to reconnect with each other by rebuilding the bonds that had been damaged by years of favoritism and denial. I came to understand that their decision to seek comfort with me was not just about physical distance from Lisa, but a desire to rebuild the family they had nearly lost. They needed a new beginning, and so did I. My parents and I have since discussed what to do with Lisa. She is currently staying at one of her friends' homes. We can't just leave her, despite the turmoil she has caused in our lives as parents. My mom and dad feel a deep sense of responsibility towards their daughter, even if her actions have been unforgivable. We have come to terms with the fact that her behavior might not be just deliberate mischief, but might be indicative of deeper issues. We plan to explore the possibility of a mental health evaluation to better understand her condition. However, since Lisa is an adult, we can't force her into such an assessment and plan to find a way to encourage her to seek help voluntarily. My parents plan on reaching out to Lisa once they are back home to see if she is open to a discussion. I don't want to contact her because she still holds a strong grudge against me, and I'm trying not to worsen the situation for the sake of her mental health. Considering the past incidents of aggression and violence, I have encouraged my parents to meet her at a public place so that she would be forced to control her emotions. Our primary goal is for Lisa to understand our perspective and, most importantly, recognize the deep love and concern we hold for her. It's not about assigning blame, but rather about coming together as a family to address the issues that have strained our relationships.